Hello guys, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Gradeup and welcome to yet another class of YouTube. Today we have got a very important topic for you and a somewhat different topic, a little offbeat topic, that is with regard to the religious contribution of Jainism and Buddhism to Indian cultural sphere. So happens to be very important for your exam, and this is why we have brought this topic to make sure that you gain this holistic understanding of this topic, that is Jainism and Buddhism. Before this guys, I would like to tell you that we have come up with Gradeup Super offer, which is a subscription plan. So those of you who have not installed the Gradeup app, please make sure you do it after the class, and those of you who have the Gradeup app but have not updated it, please make sure you update our latest app to make sure that you get this benefit of unlimited access to different courses with this offer that we have, that is the Gradeup Super offer that we have. Okay, so good afternoon everyone. Good afternoon Nishu, a very good afternoon to you. Guys, is the screen visible to you? Please let me know quickly whether you can see the slide or not. Guys, please let me know whether you can see the slide or not so that we can continue further. Okay, so let's begin with an overview of the topic that we are doing, that is the context in which these religions arose on the cultural landscape of the country. So what it says is that in the 6th century BC, the political, social and economic conditions in India were in a state of flux. So this was the time wherein the political, social and economic conditions in India were in a constant state of flux, because it was a basically transitional period where a lot of changes were taking place with regard to the socio-economic and political sphere in the country, in India. And a lot of religious sects arose in the Middle Gangetic Plains in this period, because the focus of the Aryan civilization happens to shift to the Middle Gangetic Plains during this period, and that is why a lot of flux was there in terms of the rise of different states, which is Mahajanpads as they have been called. Then in terms of religious affiliations, for example, a lot of them we will talk about, some of them like Jainism and Buddhism, but it is said that as many as 62 of these sects, they arose in the Middle Gangetic Plains in this particular period, and many of them, they were basically indigenous cults that were practiced in the eastern part of the country during this period. So a lot of them, they were indigenous also, which impacted the Aryan civilization. Of these, Jainism and Buddhism, they emerged as the most potent one and had a profound influence on the Indian civilization. Since there were so many of them, naturally there would be just one or two religions that would emerge as the front runner, and they would have this long lasting impact on the Indian civilization. Rest of them, they made their own limited cultural contribution. They were, many of them, they had quite a following. For example, Ajivikas, they were quite famous, But you see, of all of them, 62 or maybe it could be 17, the number of such sects during this time, of them only Jainism and Buddhism had a very, very profound influence. In fact, if we talk about Buddhism, it had this impact not only in India but more so in the countries outside of India, because you know that in India ultimately Buddhism got wiped out by the first few centuries of AD. So this is the kind of impact that these two religions had, and the kind of flux that this period was going in the material aspect, in the economic aspect, and in the political aspect. So I hope this is clear. Let's see what are some of the factors that led to the origin of these religions that we are talking about, that is Buddhism and Jainism. Let's see what are the contributory factors, causative factors to their origin and rise. The first aspect or the first cause happened to be the Brahmin Kshatriya alliance. You see, there was this Brahmin Kshatriya alliance which led to the rise of these religions. One of the causes, basically what was happening during this period, that after the later Vedic phase, wherein the caste system has crystallized in the form of Chaturvarna system, or the 4-4 division of the caste system. That is, we'd have Brahmins on top, then you would have Kshatriyas, then Vaishyas and Shudras. So you see, by this period there was this strong nexus between Brahmins and Kshatriyas to dominate and sit over and lord over the lower two castes, that is the Vaishyas and the Shudras. So Brahmins and Kshatriyas, what was the alliance? That the Kshatriyas made gifts and other sort of donations to the Brahmins, and the Brahmins in turn legitimized the rule of the Kshatriyas. They propagated the theory of semi-divine rule of the king, and they preached subordination to the general public, to the king, who happened to be the ultimate authority, the central authoritative figure. So this was a kind of nexus that was there during this period, and as a result of that, both of them, they, as I said, lorded over the two lower castes. In fact, Vaishyas were the only caste that had to pay taxes, and these two castes, or Varnas to be more appropriate, they were not paying any taxes. In fact, they, as I said, sat heavily upon the lower two castes. Vaishyas were paying taxes, and Shudras, they were serving the upper three castes. So you see, what was happening is that these two castes were ruling over these two, and these three castes, that is the Dvijas, so Dvijas also includes the Vaishyas, these three castes lorded over the Shudras, who were the servants, basically the people who served the higher three orders. So this was the kind of social structure that was prevalent during this time, and more so it was increasing priestly domination and complex rituals. So this was a time wherein, apart from the Brahmin Kshatriya nexus, there were also this tension between the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas, because Brahmins, they claimed this privileged status, they claimed privileges in every form of political dealing, in social dealing, and they said, we are the supreme order in the society. And Brahmins increasingly gained power during this period as a result of the complex rituals that they devised, because they suggested that all the sacred knowledge of the culture and religion the Vedic religion had was concentrated in them, and that is the reason why they began to be gradually dominating the lower three orders, which was not liked by the Kshatriyas also. So this was the increasing priestly domination and complex rituals which none of the people apart from the Brahmins themselves, they were able to understand. And since they could understand these complex rituals that were devised by the Brahmins, there was this reaction by the lower three orders, more so the Kshatriyas, who could have this assertive influence because they were the kings, ultimately they were the rulers. So they also began to chafe under the domination of the Brahmins. Then there is an indiscriminate killing of the wealth for sacrifices, indiscriminate killing of cattle wealth. Now guys, you see, this is a time wherein the focus of the Aryan civilization has shifted towards the eastern part of the country, that is East UP, eastern part of Uttar Pradesh plus Bihar. So this is the cradle of the Aryan civilization, and the soil of this region is very, very fertile, but it requires the use of iron plowshare. It requires the use of which type of plowshare? That is iron plowshare. And iron plowshare, if you use in that type of soil which is like very, very tough, very, very hard, lumpy kind of soil, sticky kind of soil, but very productive, it requires the use of cattle. And you see, this is a time wherein there is increasing Brahmin domination, priestly domination, and the priests are propagating the sacrifices to entrench themselves, to establish their supremacy. And if such large scale cattle sacrifices are there, how would agriculture flourish in such a situation wherein the soil is ready to give bounteous crops, but then there is no cattle on the basis of which the plowing can be done? Because ultimately people can't plow, right, on by themselves. There has to be use of cattle wealth for plowing for a productive agriculture. And this is the reason the people of the lower order, especially the Vaishyas, they did not like, and even the Shudras, but then Vaishyas could be more assertive than the Shudras, and the Kshatriyas could be more assertive than the Vaishyas. So these lower orders, they happen to react against this indiscriminate killing of the cattle wealth for ritual sacrifices which they could not understand. I hope this is clear so far. Then next we have increasing wealth and economic status of the Vaishyas. Now this is the time when there is gradual rise of metal currency. In fact, punch-marked coins. Have you heard about punch-marked coins, guys? Just let me know. Punch-marked coins made of silver and in some cases bronze also. They are coming into picture for the first time, and there is this greater surplus that is available through the agriculture of the eastern part of the country. And as a result, there is this rise of trade and rise of towns and cities, etc. So you see, what's happening is that the Vaishyas, the merchant class, the third order in this Brahmanical structure, it gradually rises in prominence, it rises in wealth and economic status, and as a result, what happens is that it becomes more and more assertive. Because now it has got what? It has got wealth and economic status, but they are still denied the social status. They still don't have the social status, which is the exclusive preserve of the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas. They don't have the social status, as a result of which they look for an alternative religion wherein they could be given a higher social status. They already have the influence, they already have the money, they already have wealth by now, but then they don't have the social status, because even a poor Brahmin during this time would be seen as more superior to a very wealthy Vaishya. I hope you get this overall context in which these religions they developed. What were the reasons that provided the conducive and fertile ground for the rise of these religions? So naturally, these Vaishyas or the merchant class, they were the biggest patrons of Buddhism and Jainism when these religions arose, so that they could have, they could claim an equal social status as vis-a-vis the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas. Then there is this reaction from old school. Even there was this old school which could see that there is a lot of churn going on, there are a lot of changes on the ground, there are a lot of changes in the ways of the manner in which people speak, the changes in the manner of clothes and means of transportation, in lifestyle and modern form of a lifestyle consumerism, aided by the rise of towns and cities, aided by metal currency. They have come up, and as a result, the old school wants to go back to the old ways. the old ways wherein there was this egalitarian society, there was these tribal bonds in which more emphasis, more importance was placed to the social bonds rather than the new consumerism, consumeristic form of lifestyle, new form of the material wealth, which was the increasing focus of the people, the change in the lifestyle of the people. So there was this reaction of this old school to go back to the old Spartan ways, to go back to the old simple way of life that was before this period, the transition that it was going through. So it aided the rise of some sects that believed in Spartan living, that believed in austere lifestyle. And you know, Jainism and Buddhism, both of them, they propounded austere lifestyle. So you see, this is another contributing factor. And finally, inability of the Upanishads to provide satisfactory answer, because the Upanishads, they happen to deal with the queries that people have during this time. A lot of flux is going on in this society, and Upanishads come up as a way to suggest answer to the people, to give the people some sort of answers that they had for increasingly complex rituals of the Brahmins. They could understand those rituals. They were like very complex to the people. So Upanishads said that those rituals are not important enough. What is important is that it also suggested some sort of answers in the form of philosophical these things, metaphysics and all those sorts of things. But even then, the metaphysical nature of the Upanishads was beyond the ability of a common man to understand. First, it was the increasing complex rituals of the Brahmins. It was followed by Upanishads. Even Upanishads, they were not able to connect with the masses, because the masses are very simple people. The layman is very simple. He wants plain simple answer, no complex metaphysics and no complex philosophical speculations. He doesn't want to get into all of that. And as a result of that, there was this conducive ground which was provided in the form of the answer that was provided to all these questions of the people in this changing period by the new religions, new sects called Buddhism and Jainism. First, we'll be taking up Jainism, and we will be seeing the origin and the preaching and the tenets, etc. So various facets of Jainism. I hope I am clear till now. If you have any questions so far, you can ask me, guys. Do you have any questions so far, or is everything clear to you? Do let me know very quickly so that we can proceed ahead and we can see the various facets of Jainism. Any doubts so far? Otherwise, I will assume that you have no doubt and I will go forward. Okay, so I don't think there is any doubt so far. Let's move on to the next section, that is Jainism and Buddhism. So you see, Jainism, its origin, first of all, we'll be talking about the origin of Jainism. According to Jainas, the origin of Jainism goes back to very ancient times, and they believe in 24 Tirthankaras or Jinas as they are called. However, it was Mahavir who infused the sect with a new zeal. It was Mahavir, Vardhaman Mahavir, who infused a new zeal into this sect. It is said that even before Mahavir, there was Jainism and it was already a sect. It wasn't Mahavir that who founded the sect, but Mahavir happened to infuse a new zeal. He added on to some of his own philosophical and tenet etc. in the religion, and he made it a more popular religion. Before that, it was a sect during this time, and it was not very a kind of a popular form of sect before Mahavir, but nonetheless it did exist on the ground. So he is said to be born in 540 before Christ in Kunda Grama near Vaishali and belonged to the Janatrika tribe. So what has been said over here is that he was born in 540 BC. In fact, there is no unanimity among the scholars with regard to the birth of Vardhaman Mahavir. Some say it was 540, some quote some different date, but nonetheless this has to be taken as a standard date. He was born in Kundal Grama near Vaishali and belonged to the Janatrika tribe. A lot of guys think that he belonged to the Lichavi tribe, Lichavi clan, but you'll have to remember that Lichavi was the tribe of his mother and the tribe of his father was Janatrika. So make sure you keep this in mind, because in the exam you could be asked this question and it will have you confused. In spite of being a householder, he abandoned the family at a young age and attained Kavalya at the age of 42. So he was a householder just like Gautam Buddha, and he had a wife also. He abandoned his entire family at a young age of 29, and he attained this Kavalya, which is Gyan, enlightenment, Nirvana, as it has been called in Buddhism, at the age of 42, after meditating for 12 years and making penance and severe austerities on his bodies. So after living as a wanderer and teacher, he passed away at the age of 72 at Pavapuri near Rajgir. So you see, he was preaching his religion, moving on from one place to another. In fact, he did not stay at one village more than a night and at a particular location, that is a city, for more than 5 days, and he kept on wandering. All his life was dedicated towards the cause that he propounded, and he died finally. He attained, attained Nirvana at the age of 72 at Pavapuri, which is near Rajgir. So Rajgir happened to be the ancient capital of Magad. First it was Rajgir and then it was Patliputra. I hope you know this. Let's talk about the spread of the religion. How did it spread about? So let's see, what was some factors that restricted its spread also, because it did not spread as much as Buddhism spread, because this was limited to India, and even in India some particular pockets, unlike Buddhism, which happened to be an international religion subsequently. But ultimately even Buddhism got wiped out from India, the country of its origin. Due to strict rules and tenets of Jainism, it never had a very large number of followers, because you see, we will talk about some of the facets of Jainism, and they were like very, very strict rules and tenets, and it propounded to impose severe penances and severe austerities on the people. That is why it never had a very large number of followers. And gradually, you see, despite this, it did found some root. It did spread in the southern part of the country, western part of the country, because the Brahmanical religion was weak over here. You see, if this is the map of the country, the heart of the Brahmanical religion was the Ganga Valley. It was the Ganga Valley which was the heart, the core of the Brahmanical religion. But in the southern part of the country and in the western part of the country, this Brahmanical religion was slightly weak. It was less entrenched, it was less orthodox, and people were more open to adopting a new religion. And the religion of Jainism, it did leave this imprint in the western part of the country. In fact, even now you would know perhaps that in Gujarat, in Malwa and Rajasthan, there is quite a big Jain community over here, especially the merchant class. And in fact, even in South India, it is in the southern part of Karnataka where we have some considerable number of the followers of Jain religion. And in the rest of the country, they are there, but the numbers are not very significant. So it's in the western and the southern part where it made its most impact. In the course of time, differences arose between the Jainas and is split into Sritambas and Digambars. So with the passage of time, what was happening, the Jainas, they had these differences among themselves, and ultimately there was a split between the Shvetambars, the Shvetambar Jainas, who were in the eastern part of the country, who had this influence in the eastern part of the country, and the Digambars. So Digambars means sky clad, or who don't wear any clothes at all, in the southern part of the country. So there was a split, and there was this Shvetambars and Digambars. So Digambar is from the word Dig, it's like the sky. So they don't wear any clothes at all, they discarded everything. So it was so austere and so severe in their case. But the Shvetambars, they had white clothes. That is why it was Sritambas. So they used to wear white clothes. Even now you see a lot of Jain monks wearing white clothes. It was patronized by only a few kings, which also acted as a hindrance to spread. Even though it did spread, I mentioned in some pockets, but there were some reasons why it did not become a very popular religion and did not lead to the conversions of millions of people. Why? Because of the strict tenets and the severe austerities that Jainism propounded as a religion. That is number one. And the second factor happens to be the lack of patronization by the kings, because it was only a very few number of kings that patronized this Jainism religion. For example, Kharavela of Odisha, King Kharavela in the 1st century BC, it was patronized by him. And then there was the famous Ganga rulers of Mysore. They also happened to patronize of Mysore. They also happen to be patronizing Jainism, but you see, by and large, the number of patrons who were kings, it was quite small as compared to Buddhism. And even those rulers, they were not like as famous as in the case of Buddhism. We will talk about the famous rulers like Ashoka and Kanishka in the case of Buddhism. So Jainism, it did remain in India, unlike Buddhism, which got wiped out, but nonetheless the followers were small. They have always been small, but they remained. In the case of Buddhism, the followers increasing swelled in number, but they also shrank rapidly from India, and they ultimately vanished in India, but they left their mark in rest of the foreign countries, which we will talk about later. Let's talk about some of the tenets of Jainism. Before that, again, I would ask you if you have any questions. You can ask me. If it is a little confusing for some of you, you can clarify your doubts before I would move forward. Any doubts so far? Okay, so in the meantime, we will talk about the tenets of Jainism. You can ask me the doubt as well. So I check and I will answer your doubts. One is, the Jainism recognized the existence of God but placed them lower than the Jinnas. So this is the first tenet, that they did recognize the existence of God but placed them lower than the Jinnas who have attained enlightenment. Didn't condemn the Varna system but attempted to mitigate its evils. It did not condemn the Varna system, it did not attack it. Unlike Buddhism, we will see there is some contrast. In fact, it is more inclined towards Hinduism. You see, it recognized the existence of God, it did not condemn the Varna system, but rather it attempted to mitigate its evils. But there is a difference, that it rejected authority of Vedas and the Vedic rituals. It said that there is no point getting into Vedic rituals, the rituals and sacrifices. In fact, it's also strongly propounded the idea of ahimsa, and the idea of ahimsa is directly against what was propounded by the Brahmins during this period in the Vedic form of various rituals and sacrifices. Because if you have to conduct any sacrifice, naturally it will entail the loss of a life, that is the animals, and that is why they rejected the Vedic the authority of the Vedas, that they are not supreme, and then they also happen to reject the Vedic rituals. The idea of practicing austerity, it was so severe, and the idea of practicing ahimsa, they took it to a very severe level altogether, and a very extreme level. And this is the difference between Jainism and Buddhism, that Buddhism propagates a more middle path, a less austere path, a more balanced way of life, as compared to Jainism, which was very extreme form of this austerity. And this is one of the reasons why, as I said in one of the previous slides, that it did not attain a very wide fan following, because naturally not everybody would be inclined to make all those sacrifices. Even a poor person would be disinclined to make all those sacrifices, even though he's got nothing. Even practicing agriculture was considered sinful, as it caused injury to living beings in the soil. So you see, when we till the land, when we plow the land, there would be small creatures in the soil, there would be germs, there would be ants, there would be termites, there would be earthworms. So it would lead to injury of those creatures, and this is why it is said that even agriculture is sinful, and that is why most of the followers of Jainism, they took to trading, and that is why even the Jainas today, most of them, they in the country, they are basically into commercial pursuits. They are into trade and commerce. They believed in the transmigration of the soul and the theory of karma. Believed in the transmigration of the soul, that the soul migrates from one body to another. Body gets destroyed, but the soul doesn't, and it moves on from one body to another. The theory of rebirth, and also the theory of karma. So karma theory, you already know, that is what is done by you in this birth would be this manifestation of your dividends, rewards or punishment that you reap in the next birth. So they believed in the theory of the soul and the theory of karma and the transmigration of the soul. So another similar thing which was already present in the Vedic religion during this time. Okay, so we are done with Jainism. Again, any question with regard to Jainism, I am free and happy to answer you. So far, any question on Jainism? Let's move to the next important religion. In fact, this religion happened to make a greater mark not only in India but also in many countries of the world, because it became an international religion. In fact, you would know that today many countries of the world, they are Buddhist, and this is the gift of India to these countries. It talks about the cultural strength of India in those days, the soft power of India even now, because you see this kind of great cultural revival that was taking place in the country during those ancient times. It can be called a sort of renaissance that was going on during this time. A lot of ferment, intellectual ferment during those times. So you see, Indians have not always been what they were seen by the Western during the British rule and even before, as backward people, as who don't have a sense of history, who don't have a sense of culture at all, more or less barbarians. So this is not the case. So our present shouldn't be, we should not judge someone by the present. In fact, in the past, that particular person or particular society or civilization might have much bigger achievements. Okay, let's talk about the origin of Buddhism, founded by Gautam Buddha, who was also an older contemporary of Mahavir. So it is said that Gautam Buddha happened to be older amongst these two, that is between Mahavir and Gautam himself. He was the older one. Apparently he was born in 563 BC, though even this date is disputed, but nonetheless we would take this date, which is frequently cited by scholars and authors. He was born in a Shakya Republican tribe in Lumbini. So these Republican tribe had oligarchy, that is a group of people, they were the rulers, not monarchy wherein one single person would be the source of all power. It was an oligarchy. It was a Republican tribe wherein there was some of Republican elements. There was these various princes and kings who held the power collectively on behalf of the tribe, and it was like a very, very egalitarian form of this Republican scheme that they had, Republican political this administration that they had, these Republican tribes. Even Lord Mahavir, he happened to belong to this Republican tribe of Janatrika, not a monarchical setup that we are talking about here. So Republican tribe again. Like Mahavir, he left home at 29 and attained Nirvana at the age of 35 at Bodh Gaya. So you can see a lot of similarities between Mahavir and Buddha. That is, both of them, they abandoned the family at young age. Both of them, they were of Kshatriya clan. Both of them, they belong to Republican tribe. So you see a lot of similarities, and both of them ultimately attained Nirvana. He attained Nirvana at the age of 35 in Bodh Gaya. Delivered his first sermon at Sarnath and continued to spread his message till his death in 483 BC at Kushinagar in Deoria. So he had a very strong physique, it is said, and on a daily basis he walked so much so that rest of his followers used to get fatigued, but he did not. And till his death at the ripe age of 82 years, he kept on wandering from one place to another in the this endeavor or spreading his message of his Dhamma, his philosophy, his tenets, and we will see what those tenets are in one of the coming slides. So he ultimately gained this Mahaparinirvana, which has been called his death at Kushinagar in Deoria in eastern part of Uttar Pradesh. Let's talk about the spread of Buddhism. How did it spread, and what is the kind of spread that it had in the form of geographical footprint? First is that it gained a large following even during Buddha's own life. You see, this is the difference, real difference between Jainism and Buddhism, that Jainism as a religion couldn't make much headway, let alone on the international sphere, but even in India itself. And on the other hand, Buddhism, it gained a large fan following even during the times of Buddha's life, and after Buddha, in fact, it spread very, very rapidly to different countries. Its democratic and liberal ideas appealed to the people as it did not discriminate on the basis of caste and sex. You see, this was the time when there was a lot of discrimination based on Brahmin orthodoxy and the nexus between the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas, that people of lower varnas, they were discriminated against, and there was this gradual entrenchment of the discrimination with regard to women. They were considered subordinate and inferior to men in the society. So this was the democratic and liberal appeal of Buddhism to the people, that they were admitted to the the Sangha, Buddhist Sangha and the religion without discrimination on the basis of caste, sex or anything. So this is the kind of radical idea, radical perspective and ideas that Buddhism has, which really appeal to the people, and rapidly the number of people swelled. And also, as I mentioned, that Buddha preached this something called Madhyam Marg or middle path, and as a result, people, the followers of Buddhism, they were not also asked to undergo very, very strict and severe penances, severe austerities, as in the case of Jainism, which was very, very severe and strict. And that is why you see Buddhism happened to gain more number of followers as compared to Jainism. It also found a virgin soil for conversion in non-Vedic areas like Magad. So in Magad, it found a virgin soil for conversion of the indigenous people, because there the Brahmanical religion, it was quite weak beyond the Ganga river in Bihar, in the eastern part of the country. So if this is the Ganga river, this is Magad, and this is the northern part of Bihar. So in this part, the Brahmanical religion was not very entrenched, and as a result, there was rapid conversion of the people. The use of Pali by monks brought message of Buddha closer to the people. Pali was the language of the masses, and that is the reason the monks who used this language, it rapidly influenced the people, because unlike the Brahmins of the day who were using Sanskrit, was a language of the priestly class, a very, very microscopic tiny minority of the people who like to keep themselves aloof from the masses, who like to keep themselves isolated from the rest of the people. Here in the case of Buddhism, the Buddhist monks, they mingled freely with the people, with the common people, whatever their caste be, and they also used the language of the people, that is Pali, which was not exclusive in nature. And this is how there was this rapid conversion of the people on the ground. It was less rigid and more accommodative than Jainism, as I've already mentioned this point, that it was less rigid and more accommodative, and people, they really found it easier to practice the ideals of Buddhism as compared to Jainism. It had great patrons like Ashoka and Kanishka. This happens to be, by the way, a very important reason in the contributing factor to the spread of Buddhism, because it had great patrons like Ashoka and Kanishka, and you know, both of these rulers, who were very famous. They had very large empires. Ashoka, Kanishka's empire straddled Central Asia. A large part of Central Asia was under the rule of Kanishka, and if the ruler himself is a great patron of that particular religion, you can imagine the kind of impact it would have in spreading of the religion in the subjects of those kings. And likewise, Ashoka also, when he converted to Buddhism, he sent various missions to Central Asia, to Sri Lanka, etc. So Ashoka also contributed a lot to make it a world religion, and subsequently also the Buddhist monks, not only these two rulers, but subsequently also a lot of rulers and a lot of monks, Buddhist Sangha, it played a very important role in ensuring that this spreads to rest part of the world, for example Southeast Asia, in Tibet, in Central Asia. But in Central Asia, with the passage of time, Islam gained this dominance and Buddhism got wiped out. Tenets of Buddhism. Let's talk about some of the tenets. What are the important tenets? Does not recognize the existence of God and soul, in contrast with Jainism, which Jainism does recognize. Here it does not recognize, so you should be able to clearly differentiate between the tenets of Jainism and Buddhism. Attacked the Varna system and rejected the authority of the Vedas. In fact, Jainism did not attack the Varna system, it accepted the Varna system, but it did reject the authority of the Vedas. Buddhism did both. Initially aggressively attacked the Varna system because it discriminated between man and man, and it also rejected the authority of the Vedas and the Vedic sacrifices, Vedic rituals, etc., and the killing, of course, that accompanies the Vedic sacrifices. Buddha suggested the middle path or the Madhyam Marg and asked his followers to avoid extremes of anything. It could be extremes of pleasure, it could be extremes of pain or whatever. So he said, please have this balanced approach in life rather than a very lopsided kind of approach which will ultimately be not sustainable in the long run. So have this middle path, and which makes sense. Even today, I think the policy should be the policy of moderation, because there is a famous saying in English that excess of everything is bad, and that is why we should have this policy of moderation, be it whatever. The main teachings of Buddhism are encapsulated in the basic concept of Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path. So please go through what are these Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path. This is your homework. Let's talk about the decline of Buddhism. Let's also see what are some of the factors that led to the decline of Buddhism from India. Now you see, from India it spread to west parts of the world, it spread to Central Asia, it spread to Eastern Asia or East Asia, it spread to Southeast Asia, but in the country of its origin itself, it declined totally. So you see, we will talk about what are those factors that contributed to the same. First is the dilution of tenets and practices, that there was a lot of dilution of the tenets and practices. The Buddhist religion became very lax with the passage of time after the death of Buddha. In fact, there was also a split in Buddhism in the form of Hinayan and Mahayana. So one is Hinayan and second is Mahayana. And these people, this sect, Mahayana and the Buddhism, was more relaxed, more accepting as compared to the Hinayan, who were more strict with rules and regulations. And in fact, Mahayana, the followers of Mahayana, they played a very important role in spreading this religion, especially in Central Asia and in East Asia. So there was this gradual dilution of tenets and practices. In fact, they adopted idolatry. They began worshipping Buddhism, Buddha, images of Buddha, and otherwise also the rules in Buddhist sanghas, the Buddhist monasteries, they also became lax. And in fact, many of those monasteries became very rich. They accepted gold, silver, and they had women in them. That led to a lot of corruption, and ultimately it led to dilution in practices. Adoption of Sanskrit as a language for religious purposes. We saw in one of the previous slides that the Buddhist monks taught the layman in Pali, the language of the masses. But gradually what happened was that Buddhism as a religion began to go further. It began to isolate itself from the main masses. and it began to adopt the language of the classes, that is Sanskrit. And as a result, there was no contact between the common people and the followers of Buddhism, because they happened to adopt this Sanskrit language, which was a language only of a few percentage, that is the elite of the Indian society. There was a challenge from Brahmanical religion when the Brahmanical religion saw that its followers are getting converted to Buddhism and Jainism. As a result, they happened to bring about some changes in the Brahmanical religion. They became more lax with regard to some of the practices in Brahmanical religion. For example, there was this emphasis on the idea of ahimsa, because earlier there was a lot of focus on the slaughter of these cattle wealth and sacrifices, rituals, etc. Then it began to be less sacrifice centric and more emphasis was given on ahimsa. And also the Brahmins, they made the rules for women and Shudras more relaxed. Now they could hear Ramayana and all those sort of books, but not obviously they could not read Vedas even now, but they could hear Ramayana and Mahabharata. But there was some kind of relaxation with regard to the women and Shudras also, and there was this lack of state patronage, that there was this gradual lack of state patronage. In the beginning, naturally there was this lot of patronage given by Ashoka, by Kanishka, but subsequently we see with the fall of the Mauryas, there was this back-to-back successively, there was rulers who propounded Brahmanical religion, who were champions of Brahmanical religion. For example, after the Mauryas, it was the Shungas, then Kanvas, and then Guptas. So successively you see these dynasties, they were champions of the Brahmanical religion, and as a result there was a dwindling of the state patronage, which ultimately led to one of the causes for the decline of Buddhism from India. And there was a religious persecution also, during the 6th, 7th centuries. In fact, it is suggested that said that the Hunas, who were the barbarian invaders from Central Asia, they persecuted the Buddhist monks, and they were also persecuted subsequently in the 12th century when the Mughal armies, the Turkish armies, Muslim armies, or the Turkish armies, they invaded the country. So there was this famous monastery, you would already know this, that is the Nalanda University, that was destroyed by Bakhtiyar Khalji, who happened to be one of the generals of Muhammad Ghori. So he totally destroyed this great monastery and put hundreds and thousands of monks to death, and destroyed the famous library. In fact, it is said that that library had so many books, so millions of books, that it kept on burning for months altogether when it was put to fire by the invading Turkish armies. I hope this is also clear to you. Any question, guys, that you have regarding what we have done so far, so that if you have any doubt, I can clarify your doubt, and then we can call it a day. So this was all from my end. If you have any question, you can let me know. Meanwhile, guys, please do not forget to install this latest version of Gradeup app, because it has got Gradeup Super, this subscription plan that we have come up with, a very fantastic opportunity for you to avail until 18th, wherein we are coming up with a great offer to you. And please make sure that you avail of that offer. Any questions if you have? Otherwise, we will call it a day. Okay guys, thank you so much. I'll see you in another class. Take care. Bye bye.